This one's called Bullet in a Flask. Yeah, I know there's been tavern talk of my moonshine and its effect on the jugmen that been sipping it. Some saying it's cursed, much like us graves here in county. Well, rumors is worse than embers floating round the prairie in a drought. So it's best I douse them before the fiction sets us all ablaze. Now, the water I use to douse them embers might be as clear as swamp mud, but I aim to give it my best, even if it do leave a question or two about me when the tale's done told. So, y'all best pour yourselves an adult beverage for this one. It ain't for the faint of heart. It ain't got no happy ending either. I've spent most of my life coaxing fire from corn and sugar, turning sin into shine. I know these ridges better than my own reflection, every hollow, every whisper of wind through pine. But there's one sound I'll never forget, the slow, steady rhythm of the rider in black coming for me through the fog that one night. It was late autumn, see, the kind of night when the moon hides behind the clouds and the air tastes got that bitter edge, same as uncut shine. Burns going down, wakes you right up, it does. I was tending my still by the creek and the fire was low and the jars was lined up like soldiers waiting for sunshine bloodshed. Forest was quiet, more quiet than a graveyard. Even the crickets had gone mute. And then I heard it, the slow trot of them horse hooves, like they knew where I was. Deliberate is the word that comes to mind. At first I thought it might be a revenuer, or worse, one of them locals looking to rob me blind. Turned out to be much worse than the both looking back at it. I reached for my pump action. I was hearing each step land like a heartbeat, steady and certain, reverberating like a church through that cold fog. Then I saw him. He rode out the mist, and the shadow gave shape. Black duster, black hat, black bandana, black horse even. Only light came from the foot of his Maduro cigar, and the faint gleam of brushed black steel at his hip was a matte revolver, I reckon, the kind that could spit both lead and fire. His face was hidden in the shadow of his hat, but I could feel his eyes on me, rigid, patient. "Evening," I called out, trying to sound calm. "You lost, friend?" He didn't answer. Just sat there, hoarse breathing slow clouds into the night. Then he spoke. His voice was low and smooth. "Vincent Graves." Heard my name from that darkness chilled me worse than the fog. "Said, you got business with me?" He nodded once. He said, "You've been busy, Graves." I tried to chuckle, though it came out thin. It may not be honest work, but fire is the truth, Paul used to say. He chuckled. "Paul used to say, huh? I say you make death. You brew to shine, you ain't allowed to brew no more. Burned your brothers to ash so you could keep that paw of yours recipe and all that profit to your damn self." Now that comment made me turn my pressure valve up. I said, "Hold your horses, now what do you know?" I hollered at the man. "I lost everything that night. Look at my face. This looked like a face of a man who aimed to kill his own kid. I loved Eli and Boone. I was the only one looking out for them after Paul died. Everyone knows the Graves family live and dies by the goddamn steel. I barely made it out of them flames. You ain't know nothing, stranger." He dismounted that black horse of his, boots squished in the mud. The lamette hung heavy on his side. "I know enough," he told me. I raised my shotgun. "You best turn around, stranger, before your confusion continues to fester." He ain't moved, though. He just looked at me. Or maybe he done looked through me. He said, "The man who sent me knows, Graves. That's all that matters to me." Then there was a flash. The roar of that revolver split the night like thunder. felt a punch in my chest like a damn buffalo stampede hit me. I fell back against the hay bale and I tried to fire back. My old paws wasn't fast enough to clench my trigger. He knocked the barrel of my gun down and cracked the butt of that LeMat against my face in one swift motion. Air stunk of gunpowder and blood iron. I couldn't feel my breath. See, between a new entrance to my chest and my broken nose, I couldn't bring myself to grasp the air. He leaned in and whispered to my bleeding face. Said, "Consider this your warning, Graves. Don't brew another drop of that graveyard moonshine unless you fixin' to meet death." The rider in black took that cigar he was puffing, turns it around and blew on a cherry till it glowed like a forge. And he took that cherry and he turned it like a screw into the hole in my chest until it was out. I swear it felt like the devil himself touched that bullet hole, and I hollered out. Said, "That's quite the warning, goddammit." I muttered between my bloody teeth. "Do I get the honor of knowing who sent you, or are you just a funeral man that forgot to bring the corpse? You wearing all that black to cover the dirt on your soul, ain't you, stranger?" I coughed and spit up some blood on my bow tie. The man leaned in. There was a long pause. Couldn't hear nothing except my own strained breath whistling out my newly configured nose. Saying, "Your pa sent me." I hollered at him. "Pa's been dead since 1865, you goddamn jackwagon. Unless you in contact with those who once was, he's mistaken. Your pa ain't died in 65, Vincent. Not the way you been telling." I hollered at him. "Ain't nothing but fibs, you low-down snake. I buried what was left of him myself." The man in black tilted his head, and the brim of his hat caught the moonlight. "You buried what he left behind. The fire took some of his flesh, but not his breath. He crawled out of that fire, burnt up and half mad. I reckon must have made a bargain in the dark. That's how he met me. Told me he'd done traded his soul for another chance to finish what he'd started." I felt my shirt starting to soak with the blood. "You expect me to believe that, you crazy son of a bitch?" He smiled. Or maybe it was just a shadow twisting. "You already do believe it, Vincent. Fire is the truth. You said so yourself. You've been running his still, using his recipe, feeding that same fire that took him. You ever wonder why your mash never spoils? Why your shine still burns red instead of gold?" The wind shifted, same way it did the night my brothers Eli and Boone died. It carried the smoke into my eyes, made them real watery like. I looked toward my still, and for a heartbeat, I saw a figure standing behind it. Jarred hands, hollowed eyes, damn left leg missing from the knee. My pa's face melted and grinning. The rider's voice came again, softer now. Felt like I was hearing it inside my skull. "He's been waiting for you, Vincent. The debt's come due for killing Eli and Boone." I tried to wipe my eyes dry. I thought I must have been seeing things, and in that moment the rider had gone. Only the echo of hooves faded in the fog. The fire at my still flared high, blue and hungry, and I swear I heard my paws laugh in the crackle. I don't know if it was blood loss or the horror of the thought of my paw, but darkness washed over me, and I woke the following afternoon, alone. Yeah. I sure hope I never hear them hooves again, but the fire under my steel tells me I'm going to. I ain't gonna stop brewing that recipe neither. I'm a Graves. We shine until we get there. Alright, here's part 2. Now, I reckon that rider in black knew what he was doing when he twisted that cigar in my chest. He sealed up that bullet wound with a scar and the memory of that night along with it. The wound was bruised with a black circle of ash in the center. Dried brown blood stuck on it, looking like mud. I hobbled over to the creek and washed myself as best I could. Water was cold and numbed me like a good buzz. Felt like the pain floated down the creek, away from me. Got back to the fire, put some bacon in the skillet, cracked a couple eggs on them, and started a coffee pot beside it. And I sat down wondering if Pa really was alive and if I'd seen him. After the food, I was pondering the matter and I realized what needed doing. So I waited till cover of dark, and I took my barrel cart toward Valentine. Now, as y'all might know, Valentine ain't glamorous as the title may leave one to believe. Smells like cow pot, fast women, and greed. Reckoned I'd be able to see someone who'd seen Pa if he really were still on this side of the dirt. The saloon. I enter them bat-winged doors of the Smithfield Saloon in Valentine. Smelled like tobacco, stale beer, flatulence, and wood rot. First thing I seen made me freeze dead in my boots. Sitting at the card table was 4 men. The rider in black from the night before perched like a crow on a gravestone. I seen the whites of his eyes glance up and return to his handed poker. His posture shifted, and next to him I could not believe my eyes. A shadow, a ghost, I ain't know, but what looked as a replica of the same man sat beside him, made the same damn posture change like they said something to one another, but I ain't heard a word exchanged. Across from him was a man in a tarnished leather coat and a scully smoking a pipe. The fourth was soaked, stewed, steaming full as a tick, holding his cards leisurely, trying to balance his head on his shoulders. Barkeep asked me, "What you drinking, fella?" I told him, "Pour me double rye, no junk." I sat down at the bar, sipped a few. I heard a match flick and the smell of that Maduro filled the room behind me. I stayed quiet and sipped a few, earwigging. I heard 2 sets of cards snap on the table behind me, one loud grunt, then a cold laugh from the man in the tarnished coat. "Looks like my luck is in spades tonight, boys." Then a pause. So long it made me turn around to see what I was missing. The 2 shadows at the table was looking at each other, but wasn't saying nothing. The man in the coat hollered, "You gonna pay me or should I?" Boom! Click, boom, boom, boom. Flashes appeared from across the center of the shadows faster than I could blink the light away. Blood hit the walls behind the man in the coat, and a flurry of cards and gun smoke joined the air. The hoochie that was leaning against the window caught a blinding spatter of red blood and brains, and she shrieked like a banshee. "Jesus, Mary and Joseph!" The drunk hollered, and before another moment passed, the second man in black turned and clicked something on his revolver and turned the inside of that man's skull into the outside of his skull. The barkeep ducked behind below and pulled out a sawn-off shotgun and turned toward the 2 men. Quick as lightning striking, the rider in black turned and fired a single round between his eyes. He dropped like a sack, and the whiskey bottle on the shelf shattered behind him. I put my hands as high as I could, and I didn't say nothing. The whore in the corner kept crying while she tried to wipe the man's brains off her face. Then the man in black stood over the first man shot with the coat and stared at a spring-loaded card holder in the man's sleeve. "Fucking barn rat," he muttered and spat. I didn't move a muscle. Them 2 boys turned to me, and my heart thumped louder than I'd ever heard it. They walked toward me, slow, spurs jangling dissonance like a broken church bell in the wind. Right in my face, he got up there. Through his clenched teeth, he says, "What in the fuck is you doing here, Vincent?" "I'm looking for my pa. Since you said he ain't dead, I want to see him for myself." The other man in black stood behind the other and smiled over his shoulder and said, "You already seen him." The other quickly repeated the other, but with the devil fire in his voice. "You already seen him. I thought you heard that message loud as my Lamat done told you." I heard a revolver hammer click from the second fella. I didn't move a muscle. I reckon if I had, I'd meet my end fast as a blink. Fellas, your message was duly noted, but the rider in black snapped the back of his hand across my face so hard I saw spots floating in the room. Ain't nothing else you about to tell then. We ain't here to negotiate, Vincent. Fair enough. I guess you ain't fixing to hear my recollections of that awful putrid bastard of a man that done gave you this assignment. There was a pause in the room. The two shadows looked at each other and nodded. I wanted to flinch, but kept still as a mortician. The first man turned toward the saloon doors and began his exit. The second followed behind and fired his LeMat into the floorboard next to my foot. Put a hole in the floor big enough for a badger. My shoulders jumped and I closed my eyes tight. Tell the crying whore your tale. We ain't need your story, old man. And the second shadow passed through them doors. He hollered, "Windows rock." All right, that's part 2. Y'all want? Here's the finale. I know it's a long story. Bear with me here. All right. Now, I'm a stubborn sumbitch, so I gathered my courage, moonshine some call it, and my wits, Derringer Model 95 some call it, and set out on foot toward the mountains near Valentine. The trail was narrow, unforgiving. My old knees didn't much like the incline, with cheery disposition. "Window Rock," he said. "Window Rock. The side of the mountain that frames the sky in a way that only feelings can describe, but my vocabulary cannot. Where its sunset view can change a soul for the better." I held a glimmer of hope, not in knowing that things might go well. See, I reckon they wouldn't. But at least if I were to die, at least I'd be in such a place of glory and eternal beauty. My old bones would lay in the bosom of the mountains, and peace would become me. By the time I'd made my way toward the peak of Window Rock, darkness had long since fallen again, and it was a late hour. My lantern illuminated all sorts of morbid shadows through the tree branches on the rocks. Every branch snap had me turning my head around like a local owl or something. The foul odor of guano wafted out of a cave in the side of the rock face. Then I done seen it. Looked like a portal, it did. Window Rock in all its magnificence. Moonlight polishing the rocks on it. I sighed a bit of relief and soaked it in just for a tick. "What you waiting for, Vincent?" I heard a familiar voice holler out. The voice sound grew into many more, echoing through the canyon below. "Hurry on up." Second voice matching the first. "Someone's up there, wants a word." The moonlight faded to blackness, and darkness covered her. The glow was gone from the moment. Couldn't hear nothing except the screech of an owl in the distance every so often. Then silence was broken. The silence broken by the voice of my pa. Now, if you thought my voice was deep, you ought to have heard this. He hollered out at me. "You killed your own damn kin. Get ahead in this world, son. I can't forgive that. Ain't going to. They were making their own way. Not like you. You ain't never been nothing, son. You always sucked off the teat of the family, and you killed my sons." Them words cut in worse than a new boot knife. I couldn't even see him yet. I just seen a hobbling black silhouette step from behind the other taller twin shadows. I held up my lantern and it revealed the hideous state of a man that looked somewhere between once was and still is. He stood on the stone like something unearthed from a shallow hole in the dirt. The stump of his leg was bound in old cloth gone the color of ash, and where his left hand should have been was only the memory of it. twisted scar that caught the light of the lantern flicker. His skin was pale, not with age, but with the leeching of life itself, as if the sun had gone long ago and turned its face from a beast like him. The burns ran across him in a map of ruin, ridged and puckered, the flesh warped into strange topographies of pain. His eyes were small and yellow, set deep in the sockets. Heard you some kind of big shot now, son. I done heard your shine is the truth, but I know better. You ain't never got it right, not once. You're weak and yellow. That's why you'll never get it right. All right, Paul, you made your point, told him. Yeah, you ain't proud. Even though the grave's name burning brighter than a bonfire, you can't see what losing an Eli Boone took from me. Hell, I mourn for you too, Paul. And you ain't never gave a damn about me. That comment made Paul's eyes narrow. Paul, I can brew the best shine, I do. I'm glad Mother is dead, so she couldn't see what a fucking monster you is now. Go ahead, wish death on me and do what you want. I ain't gonna stop making graves shine. Not never. You told me us graves live and die by the still. I aim to do just that. So go ahead, shoot me. I took my flask out of my breast pocket, took a big old glug, fire, and put it back. Shoot me. The two shadows on his sides moved toward me, and I felt a chill. But they kept moving on, and I heard them mount the horses and gallop away behind me. It was just me and Paul standing there staring at each other in silence. I could feel the rage from my paw. I put my hand in my pocket and clutched my pistol. Paul raised a revolver at me and just kept staring until he said, "It's your turn to see hell, son." I looked at him and I told him, "I'll see you there, Paul." Crack! A punch right to the heart. I fired my pistol through my pocket and hit Paul in the leg, one leg he had left. He hollered out and fell back, but he didn't just fall flat. He was a bit too close to that cliff edge, so he fell and fell and fell, screaming the whole way down, and then a loud thud ended his cries. I smelled moonshine and burnt cloth on my jacket. The pistol had set fire to my pocket and I patted it out. Then I realized something strange. I wasn't in pain. I felt wet on my chest and thought it was blood, but it weren't. It was shine, soaked in my shirt this time. I grabbed my breast pocket and heard a rattling sound. I pulled out my flask and it rattled again. It had busted open, and inside was, well, you guessed it, a bullet soaked in shine. I guess that's fitting. Now I have a little keepsake. I still have it with me right now. As for those twin shadows, I don't know why they let me survive that. Maybe they understood what it was like to have a father like that. I don't know. Window Rock lay in silence. It was older than men. I sat at the edge where the stones were red as blood and the dust rose faintly. Far off, two riders moved against the rising light, black upon black. The land took them in as if it had been waiting. No words were said for Paul. The man had been his blood and his undoing both. And I reckon that was the way of things. The dead asked nothing of the living. The riders were gone. Only the wind moved, whispering through the sage, and the stars lingered out one by one like cold eyes watching. I climbed down the cliff trail without haste, for there was nowhere to go that was not already written. In the dark, I thought of my father's face and the ruin of it, the eyes that had known what they'd done and could not take it back. I thought of the men in black and how they'd come from the horizon and would return to it, and how maybe they were not men at all, but something darker than black, something that rode the earth before names were given. By dawn, I was upon the plains again. The sun rose red and the merciless, and the world turned beneath it, untroubled. I did not pray. I just kept wondering. Well, till next time, folks. Thanks for listening.